I'm graduate from Tulane. Was a graduate student for Dan Krogstad in 1993. In 2000, I returned from Tulane to go to Bamako to establish myself as an investigator at the University of Bamako, and then working on several subjects such as malaria, TB, HIV. And also in 2014, I was leading the platform for Ebola testing. And also, I carry out, we've done a FDA driven study on a new aminoclonine AQ13. And so we did that in Mali in between 2013 and 2015. So actually, I am involved in COVID-19 testing.
When did the government in Mali and the people in Mali, when did they start hearing about coronavirus? When did they start enacting policies to address it, preparing, just sort of a general timeline of how the country as a whole has responded to coronavirus?
Yeah, this is a good question, because there are two steps in terms of response to epidemics. So you have to make sure that if the epidemic is close to you, maybe in your country, neighboring country, so it become a problem at that time for our country, that we will be facing to this epidemic. Set by I can say first in France, because where many are traveling between Paris and Bamako. Our first fear was that we will be contaminated by people coming to France. And at that time, we write what they call a pre-contingency planning, saying you have to prepare the country against the introduction of the disease. So we did that since February. The country was in alert, assuming that we may face to this disease. And then when the disease was in Burkina, in Senegal, in Niger, and we wrote another plan, a response plan, to make sure that the country can do testing, can have a good surveillance at the airports and all the entries from other countries. So that was a plan just to face in case the disease has to come to Mali. And the second plan was the disease is in the country. We have to make sure that we can confine the first people with disease. And we had that plan, and we are using that plan to make sure that we can confine the disease. As you know, Mali is a large country. It's difficult to maintain people, to confine, and also lack of resources, such as qualified lab personnel. We need more epidemiologists and more people to trace contacts. Tracing contact is the most heavy task in controlling epidemic. So we put many efforts to make sure that we identify any contact coming from infected people. So that plan has money, actually, and the country is putting that money to make sure that all the resources are there to confine the disease and to control the spread of the virus from Bamako to other Mali regions. So actually, Bamako is the epicenter of the disease. So the effort is just now focusing to make sure that we can control the disease within the city of Bamako. And we have many experts in the city there are two or three hotspots that we know, and efforts are made to confine the disease in those hotspots.
So you mentioned earlier about the diagnostic testing. Can you talk about your role and the role of your lab in the diagnostic testing? You know, because you were talking about identifying people and doing the contact tracing. So if you could talk about your role in that, in both the testing, are you guys involved in the contact tracing? Just sort of, you know, get into a little bit more of the detail of how you are personally involved.
Yeah, so we have a lab unit. That lab is just focusing on zoonotic disease, that's pathogen coming from animals. And that's why we were involved in the diagnosis, because we had the tool. And at the beginning, we had the tool to do what we call the real-time PCR, which is the technique recommended by WHO for testing. So we established the protocol in the lab. We validate the test, and we are now solicited by the government. We are 4 of them. There are 4 labs in Mali that has the authorization to test. So we are one of the 4 labs. So I am supervising all the testing coming to our lab. Our first kit for testing came from Marseille, at the Institute of Mediterranean Hospital. And then we received kits from China, and we validate the China kit to make sure that the results are similar as the result obtained from kit from Marseille. So far we got 100 specimen to test, and we are providing the results 3 hours after receiving the specimen. So we have 3 teams, 3 teams working, 1 team the morning, the second in the afternoon, and the third team night. So they are switching to make sure that anytime we have a specimen coming to our lab, a team is there ready to test and to provide the results to the Ministry of Health. That's what we are. This is our participation, our contribution to the response to COVID-19. So just so far testing.
And do you know how many cases there are in Mali now?
Yes. Today, same up to yesterday, we had 408 infected cases. 408 infected cases of COVID-19.
And do you know how many, or have even an estimate, how many are hospitalized, how many are being isolated in home? I'm just wondering if you know of the severity of the disease among those people.
Yes, we have 3 categories of patients. We have people who are infected but no symptoms. There are in auto isolation. So there are people who have minor symptoms like cough. They are in the hospital to make sure the disease don't develop to the severe stage, and the people who are severely ill. So that may be 3 or 5%, but let me check my number to make sure I give you the good number. So in terms of death, before that, we have a 23 death. And then we have 113 persons that are cured from the disease. So, but the remaining people are in the hospital, and there are the disease is monitored by the physician at that time. I will come to that number, the number of people who are in the hospital, just for a few minutes time to check. So there are 1,931 persons that are traced now, and we have 424 positive today. 424 positive cases and 24 deaths and 122 cured. So if we remove that to 424, you may have maybe 200 people that are in the hospital now with different symptoms. It can be mild or severe symptoms. But actually we have 4 hospitals taking care of them. So we can increase the number of bed so far. In terms of other regions, Kai is the second region after Bamako to have more cases. And then you have Mopti. And Mopti, because we have the people from MINUSMA, which is a United Nations mission for Mali stabilization. So most of the infected people come from that group also. And the people from MSF who are deployed in the regions. So far, the epicenter is still Bamako, and then Kai. Kai, we have more than 14 people in Kai. But Bamako itself is about 420 people who are contaminated. And we have more than 113 who are already cured. And we have 1,931 people that are contact, so are subject to contact tracing.
What other preventative measures did the government put in place? So, so here in the States, we've done a lot of social isolation and those kinds of things. So what are some other things that the government has done, and how is it being viewed or received by the general public?
Okay, there are two things. The individual preventive measures, like what you have to do yourself to protect to protect against, and then you have a general measure that are now the working period time is now reduced. Now is from 7:30 to 2 p.m. So it was before 4 p.m. So they reduce this time so to minimize to have a crowd in the public domain. So you have a curfew. The curfew is from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. So everybody should have to stay home during that period. So there is no sport, no activities. So if there is a crowd, it should not be more than 50 people. And then you have to respect this, what they call the social distancing, 1 meter or 1.25 meters. So that should be between everyone. In case you are 3, 4, 5, 10, but we should not exceed 50 people. But the mosque are still open. So now there is a big concern that the mosque can be a hotspot for contamination. So people are wondering why the government did not specifically close the mosque, but the church are closed, because the higher people say, okay, no more activities in the church till the epidemic is vanished. But for the mosque, they leave everybody, take your own measures. So that's a big controversy that they should prevent people to form a crowd in the mosque. So now there are several voices that are coming out saying that the government should be clear on that. There is a thinking how to confine the city of Bamako. As I told you, Bamako is the epicenter. So there is a discussion if we need to confine the city of Bamako. Nobody should enter, nobody should come in. But the Mali is a landlocked country. We don't have any port, so we rely on truck coming and coming out. So it's very difficult, because of our position to confine everyone in all the cities. Otherwise, it will be tough people to have access to food and so on.
You've you briefly mentioned it earlier, talking about the fact that Mali is such a large country. Can you talk about some of the challenges that presents in terms of control and treatment of coronavirus and COVID?
Yeah, I think it's a big challenge for us. We are trying to develop how we can decentralize the lab testing. All the testing are done in Bamako. So that means if there is a specimen in Gao, they have to send by truck or by road from Gao to Bamako, which is maybe 3 days. If we are lucky, we can have a airplane from United Nations. So what we are planning to do, because we need a BSL-2 lab to carry this from the instruction from WHO that the SARS-CoV-2 should be manipulated under BSL-2. So we think that in each region there is a lab or a structure which has a BSL-2. And then what we are planning to do is to bring a PCR machine to perform in each region the test from people who have been suspected of COVID-19. So the only thing they need to do is to send the data to Bamako, which is instantly, because by email we can send. That will make sure that we not keep people in the doubt. Because the most challenging is that sometimes you say, okay, he has COVID, and the person has to wait for 3 days or 4 days to know if he is infected or not. And you cannot handle, how many people you may have in your end waiting for the results. That's the main challenge that we are pushing the government, and we are heavily involved in that. We have the capacity to train lab people in each region of Mali to make sure they can do the testing and provide it in timely fashion the result, so the physician can carry their duty when they know the result.
Is there a timeline for that? For when the labs in each?
It could be this in the next two weeks. We don't have any choice now, because the disease is spreading from Bamako to other cities.
Okay.
And
WHO
is helping to do the inventory to find all the structures which have a BSL-2. And then we need to deploy the PCR machine and then test the people and turn people in 1 or 2 days. We're able to turn people in one or 2 days to make sure they do good quality testing and make sure that we have the result in timely fashion. And the second thing that is important is that we have to do the quality control of those tests. So 10% randomly specimens should be sent to Bamako to make sure the quality is there.
So you've talked a lot about sort of the health side of coronavirus and COVID. What other societal impacts is the disease and the virus having on Bamako, or not just Bamako, but the country as a whole?
Yes, you know that the degree of socialization in Africa, especially in Bamako, and then you have to greet everyone you meet. So now you have to have a distance between, and this is not something that we can adhere to that because it's not part of our culture. But because of this situation, we have to impose ourselves to be distant. Even though it's your parent, you have to be distant. The second thing is how we have to bury people. This is a very difficult situation, and I have to recognize we are not well prepared for that. Sometimes people want to get their body back. So it's very difficult. There are high pressure on the health worker to release the bodies. And sometimes we succeed. Sometimes it's difficult to control because you know the pressure. So that's, you know, it's changing our landscape to how to greet people. It's changing a lot, this way we greet people. And in the environment that we need to have the nose mask, the mask, it's difficult to have that anytime in a very hard, dry environment, like in April. It's very hard in Bamako. So you have to carry this and then dust. So I think that's changing our way, but we don't have any choice because the main determinant factor is the barrier. You have to have a kind of barrier anyway. And the second thing is washing, to wash your hands. So, and then because I told you that Mali rely on other countries to import. So the country, for the laboratories and the faculty of medicine and other faculties, they are able to make their own solution, hydroalcoholic solution. So that was a great thing to do because the price was jumping. And now with this local made solution, we people can access now at that solution for washing hands, make sure the hands are disinfected.
Has there been any issues of like food shortages or, you know, those kind of concerns that you have when you have these lockdowns or these restrictions? You always kind of worry about, are people gonna, you know, do they have access to food? Do they have access to the medications that they need to take on a regular basis?
Yeah, you know, the markets are the best place to get the virus. But the government did not close all the big markets. All the big markets are active. And because there was a threat, because we live day by day, like here, not in the US where you have a big freezer, you can save your food, but we don't have, maybe 75% of Malians don't have a freezer. So you can keep your food. So you have to do daily. If you close the market, the food will not be accessible to people. And that's why the governor was very careful. They did not specifically close the big market like Medina Kura or big markets. They did not close. But they want all the stores to be closed at 9 p.m. So 9 p.m. everything is closed. And also because this is Ramadan now. So there is COVID, there is Ramadan. But before COVID, the price of things was increased during the Ramadan because of higher demand. But add to the Ramadan, the COVID situation, things are very tough. Tough because food are not easily accessed because after 9 p.m. you cannot go to anywhere to get food. So it's not like a Pizza Hut in the US. You can order by phone. We are not at that at that at that stage. So it's very difficult. You know what I want to say. So that situation you cannot order by phone, but there are people are trying to organize themselves. They are small start up coming out, proposing that they can deliver your ingredient for your food at home, your bread at home, but you know it's still very at the beginning at the beginning stage.
So you mentioned Ramadan. There may be people watching who aren't
Mhm.
familiar with that. So maybe
Mhm.
you could briefly explain what Ramadan is, and then talk about, like, last year when there wasn't coronavirus, what Ramadan looked like, and then this year with coronavirus, what Ramadan looks like. And so you talked about, the food prices, but I mean, are there other elements of Ramadan that people are trying to, where you're trying to sort of balance the religious traditions with following guidelines for stopping the spread of coronavirus, and just sort of touch on those issues a little bit.
Yeah. So I was saying that during the Ramadan, usually because of demand, the price of food usually the price is going up because of more demand. Sugar, because it's a part of a tradition, you have to give sugar to your family-in-law, and then you have to give to your friend if you are more money. So this is a tradition. So sometime during the Ramadan, the price of sugar is going up. So actually, because of the COVID-19, so there is less food coming to Mali because there is no more aircraft coming. So and it's difficult for other countries because all our neighboring countries also are in the epidemic, all of them. And Mali is a landlocked country, so we have to rely on Guinea, Senegal, and Ivory Coast. So imagine that people all are confined there. So it's difficult for us to import easily things. So if you add that to the Ramadan, we think that the price of food, the price will go up. And also because there's a curfew from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. So we have less time to go to the mosque, as I said to you, before 9, because you break your fasting around 6 7 p.m. So you have just 2 hour window to do everything before everything should be closed because of curfew. So that situation is try to change our way to live. And as I told you now, we have a small startup. Try to have a phone so you can call them. They will bring your bread, so you don't need to go out. So this situation is coming, and then if you need ingredient for your food, your daily food, you are at home, you can order. But this is at a very early stage of development. So we have two situations: COVID-19 and Ramadan, and that making life of people very difficult, very, very difficult. We don't know. We just start Ramadan 5 days ago. So we don't know after 24 weeks or 3 weeks how things will be. But we think that the government will take all the measures to make sure that the price will remain the same during the Ramadan. Otherwise, we are fearing to, we are afraid that the price may jump.
I know we're sort of early on in the progression of this infection and spread of disease, but are there any lessons learned, things that you feel like worked well in Mali, things that didn't work well in Mali, anything like that that you could comment on?
Yeah, people were saying that the way to confine people was not appropriate. They, because the disease was coming from Europe, we assumed that everyone coming from Europe should be confined, and the problem have to confine them. They should be in the hotel for 2 weeks or 12 days to make sure there is no symptom, there is no infection. So we did not do that. So people were saying that that was the best option, but we don't know if the government has the funding to do that, because every aircraft coming is about 200 people, and there are many aircraft coming the same day. It's very difficult to put all of them in the hotel for 12 days. So people are saying that should be the best. So there is not a best way. It depends of the money you have. And also we didn't have many tests at the beginning. We had just maybe 2,000 tests. So if you're starting, you don't have a very strong clinical case, you can waste your test by screening no necessary people. So the strategy of the country was to save that and to focus on people who are at risk. Coming from France, they have fever and they have symptoms, so those persons should be tested. So that was the best strategy. But people say no, we should do more than that. But you don't have that resource. That may be something we have to think next time. In that situation, all the countries are in epidemic. It's difficult to rely to one country. So you cannot rely on the US. They have also their own problem. So France also has his own problem. So it was very difficult. So we rely on our resources to manage that situation, but it's the best from what we can do. So that was the big. And now people say, well, yes, we need more testing in all the part of the country. Yes, that is feasible, and we are committed as a lab to participate to that we call decentralization of testing. So we want the test to be decentralized. So each hospital, a regional hospital, should be able to perform the test and send the data for compilation in Bamako. So yes, this is what really we should do. And the problem of the respirators, we didn't have enough. So maybe 10 or 20. So maybe it's difficult because all the country like Germany, France, they need those instruments too. So it's not something we are able to solve if we don't have help from China. There were people. China was the country who had the disease first, and they're first to be able to control. And now they are sending help. They are giving help to other countries because they have more experience and more resources that they can share with other people. And that helped greatly Mali through the foundation of JACMA. JACMA sends some all those PPI and all those the tests to all the African countries, and we were able to test those kits from China to make sure that they are reliable, and they are.
Just a few more questions because I know we've been at this for a while, but one of the things that I've been curious about, a lot of the other diseases that Mali that are very prevalent in Mali have very similar symptoms. So, you know, malaria and fever and acute respiratory infections with cough. So there's a lot of similarities between symptoms for COVID and symptoms for other diseases. And you had talked about, you know, if you have limited testing supplies, how do you, you know, you can't necessarily test everyone. I guess it just made me think, how do you work through that when you have, you know, a large portion of the population are probably going to have some of the symptoms, but it may not necessarily be COVID. You know, I don't know. It's just kind of I think it adds another layer of difficulty, and I'm just to get your thoughts on that.
Yes, I think maybe the difference between Mali and the US that when here you can go to the pharmacy if you have a fever, so you can buy antibiotics without any prescription. So people, then people say, okay, because there is a COVID, maybe I have a flu, and maybe I have bacteria from flu, so I will go to buy my antibiotic at the pharmacy, which is free. It's free, so you have to pay. You don't need a prescription. So that makes it easier. And then there are people who are selling in the streets all the drugs, the medicine. So that, and also now at the same time, people refuse to go to the hospital because they think that the hospital is a hotspot, so they may get the disease. So don't people. But you remember, we have to do a study on malaria now. So, and then we have to write the SOP, how to protect the study team and also the patient coming from malaria. It could be any other disease. So now we have to change the approach. So everybody should be protected, even though if you are a study member of health worker or you are patient, both should be protected. So because the patient will come for malaria, he does want to get uh, COVID-19. And the physician also don't want to be contaminated. So everybody should have the mask and to wash their hand. So those small things, we put that as a SOP for the team to use as SOP in the field. And then we try to monitor any situation we will come from that. So do you think that people are not coming because of COVID, or and then they try to teach themselves at home? So we try to monitor those new situations because we could not say, okay, because of COVID, we stop all the malaria activities. That's not fair. That should be not done. So, and I think you are right. It's changing the landscape of everything. In the hospital, people are very careful, and then even the health worker as well as the patient, because the patient don't want to get the COVID. And so we have to have a SOP and to change everything. You have to wash your hand, you have to wear the mask, you have to have everything has changed. So, and then all protocols now ask you to have a small thing about COVID protection. Is a part of each protocol. Even is HIV protocol, you have to put something how to protect against COVID. So now the IRB is asking that. The funding agencies are asking that also, to make sure that you will not put your life in danger.
Okay, two more questions.
Mhm.
So you mentioned that some people, so as an example, maybe a person has a fever, but because of COVID, I'm reluctant to go to a health facility.
Mhm.
So how, I guess, is the government concerned that health-seeking behaviors will change? And two, do you know, like, how are they addressing that? or have they had a chance to? It may be too early on, you know, and they're just haven't had a chance to address that yet. But
yeah, I think in the contingency plan, there is a component called mobilization and communication. This is a component which is well funded, and because the thing is necessary to communicate more, to sensitize more people, to tell COVID is there, but other diseases also are, are, are still prevalent. So this message is launched in all the radios covering the country and TV. So there is more money in communication than even sometime in other activities. So this is very important. And then they have to monitor that the people who have chronic disease, they have to seek to call their physician and discuss with their physician if there is any measure to take. So you are right. Is difficult actually to travel to Bamako because you know the Sotrama. How this local bus transportation is sometimes crowded. So the taxi also, people avoid the taxi to go. So the only thing, even you have the motorbike, you have to be one. If you are two on the motorbike, one have to wear the mask. So that is changing everything. So the way to go to the hospital is changing. You go to call even the phone. People are a little bit scared. Uh, have a phone everywhere. So it's changing everything. And I was in the hospital. I did this emergency room was not crowded as before. It is an indication that people are reaching themselves to come to the hospital, but they have to talk to their physician by phone, which is the best strategy. And because it's your physician, he should know your all the history, so he should be able to respond to your health issue. So, but say that mobilization and communication is a good component of the contingency plan and is well funded. So each country, each part of the country in their language, they are trying to talk to people to do not hide their disease. As we tell you, most of our deaths didn't occur in the hospital. The 23 deaths, 10 occurred outside the hospital. That means they hide their disease. When they come for the certificate for burial, so the health worker asks to do the test post-mortem. And then they found that he was contaminated, infected. So that's why we have 23, but 10 of them did not occur in the health centers. So that's the 10 occur outside. This meaning that they hide the disease. Maybe they have other health difficulties. They didn't say so. They was contaminated, and then they stay home thinking there are disease, but it was COVID-19, and so that's also part of the situation because people want to hide or they don't want to go to the hospital because as soon as you are positive by the test, so then you have to test all your family, and then people are coming, with all those suits. So it's for me is a stigmatization. So stigmatization also is an issue also during this epidemic.
I've asked you a lot of questions. Is there anything that you important that we didn't cover or that you want to talk about? Sort of, this is sort of your opportunity to say what you think, what you feel is important or.
Yeah, I think the way you asked me to intervene or to get this interview, feel me part of Tulane. This is the first feeling I had. Let's say even I am in Mali, my school is thinking about me, and then I have to do everything to provide the new from about me, about my country, how we are facing to the disease, and maybe it will be one day part of the curriculum. in the 20 years, how Tulane deal with COVID-19. So that's the feeling I had when I have your email saying, Usman, can you give few of your time to respond to those questions? So that's, this is a good thing. Those we call the umbilical cord. The umbilical cord is still there. So between us and Tulane, and we want to keep that way.
Well, good. I'm glad it made you feel good because you are a part of the Tulane community and a very important part. So that's all the questions I have. One other quick thing, would you be willing to do, if who knows how things will progress, but potentially doing maybe a follow-up interview in a few weeks?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, of course, because I didn't say something, but we are planning to do our local research. So, there is a disease, there is an epidemic, there is a pandemic, but at the same time, research must be go, or we should do the research. So things that we are planning to do is to have the mask for nose to isolate the virus from them. So we are keeping all this use nose mask in the lab, and one day we will try to isolate the virus and how many were infected. Maybe it will give us a clue if the virus is coming by air, or maybe because don't we try to do this. Second thing is to try our local plants, like people from Madagascar, to see if we can get clearance of viruses using those plants. So this is something we try to do, and also try to see if COVID was there before December. So, we have many diseases. So sometimes we say, okay, it's a flu. Maybe it was not flu. Maybe it was malaria. It's not malaria. So we try to go to the sera that we save, and retrospectively try to find out if we can find antibodies in those sera to say, okay, maybe that's the reason Africa is less infected than Europe, for instance. That's some questions we have in our mind, and then we'll try to do research on those things. And the last thing is to sequence the circulating virus in Mali to see if it's the third generation of SARS-CoV-2. So the first generation we assume is in China. The second one is in Europe. And the third one, which is established in Mali, should be the third one. And see if there are evolution in the genome of that compared to the China, the ground zero viruses. So to calculate this, the speed of mutation. So that's something we have in mind, and we will try to do that.
Okay, good. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how those take shape and to see the results.
Yeah, it's nice to see you, Clint. Say hello to everyone.
I will tell all the Tulane folks you said hello.
Okay, good.
All right, thanks, Ousmane.
Thank you.